Hi, this is Heather. So it's July, barbecue season is in full swing, and I know what you need right now are some really good veggie burger recipes, right? Because when you go to barbecues, you want to be able to bring something and you want to show how amazing plant foods can be. So today I have a recipe to share with you. It can be made into burgers. It can also be made into little appetizer size or hors d'oeuvre size so that you can pass them around at the barbecue, give people a little sample of what a plant-based veggie burger can taste like. Now the star of today's recipe, it's called Sweet Purple Fungi, and the star is a beet, or a couple of beets. Now this recipe was actually the very first recipe that I ever came up with. And I came up with it when I was trying out a raw food diet. I was searching out recipes everywhere. This was actually the first time that I enjoyed cooking because I was seeing all of these creative ideas in doing things differently, and it got me excited. So I was seeing all these different recipes and I decided that I wanted to mix a little bit of this recipe with a little bit of this recipe. And what I'm going to share with you today is the result of that creative fusion that was the absolute first recipe that I created myself. And the fungi part are some mushrooms that I have rinsed off and dried with a tea towel. A lot of people ask me about mushrooms because there are a lot of culinary experts who say not to wash mushrooms. But my theory is mushrooms get wet in the forest and they dry off and they taste just fine. So if we rinse them off to get the dirt off and then pat them dry, they should be just fine. So to prep our beets, what I'm going to do is take the skin off. I'm just going to cut the top and the tail off. This is my bucket to take out to the compost. And I'm going to peel them. So beets are super, super red, which stains your clothes and your hands. So wear some gloves if you don't want to get your hands stained. Now the reason beets are so healthy is that red pigment is a unique phytonutrient to beets. It's called betalain, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think it goes with beets. And it has been shown to be a really powerful antioxidant, an anti-inflammatory, and a detoxification phytonutrient. And it is unique to beets. Some of the foods in the same family as beets are spinach, chard, quinoa, so some other super healthy stuff. But what really makes beets unique is that red pigment. Anytime a vegetable is a very different color from another, it means that it has different phytonutrients and different antioxidants that make it super healthy. So although it might stain your fingers, you're getting that super healthiness when you have your beets. Now, when I first made this recipe, I made it raw, and beets are very difficult for us to digest when they're raw, so I had to do some things to make sure that it was more digestible and absorbable by our bodies. One of the main things is to physically break it up, so I grated it. I'm going to show you exactly how to make this as a raw dish as well as a cooked dish, but either way, we want to break this beet up. And the reason that having raw beets is good, even though you may not absorb quite as much of the other nutrients, is that those phytonutrients, the betalains, they get destroyed by heat very easily. So if you are cooking them, you want to cook them as minimally as possible. So I'll show you how to do that in a bit, but I'm just going to chop this into chunks. And rather than grate, I'm actually going to put this into my blender with my twister jar so that I can just pulse this and chop it into very small chunks. And I'm also going to throw my mushrooms in there. So that's looking good now. And I think you could see that putting the beets on the bottom is important so that they get chopped up first. Now this would also work in a food processor, but as you can see, the Blendtec twister jar makes this super easy because you can actually push stuff down the sides as you're processing. Whereas a food processor, you'll have to stop partway to push stuff down. So just take the skin off and chop it roughly into chunks. I tend to use sweet onion because, particularly when I'm doing something raw or minimally cooked, white or red onion are very spicy. So just throw that in there and give it another few pulses. So to season our sweet purple fungi, I'm going to use some dried oregano. Just sprinkle some on there. I said 1 teaspoon in the directions, but whatever looks good to you. I'm also going to add some ground thyme just because I have some and I like using that in burgers, but that's optional. You could also use fresh thyme or whole thyme. And I'm going to use some dill weed, which is also optional, and fresh would be lovely or dried. Now dill has a very strong flavor, so you only need a little bit. I've got too much there, put that back. Then I'm going to add some onion powder, which makes things so much more savory and delicious because it's concentrated onion. So there is onion in here, so this is optional as well, but really, really tasty. And some nutritional yeast. This is just yellow, flaky stuff that you will find probably in a bulk food section or in the Bob's Red Mill section. And it adds a really nice savory flavor to vegan dishes. So I highly recommend it, but if you can't find it, again, it's optional. And you might make up for it by using some tamari or soy sauce. If you are gluten intolerant or celiac, look for some wheat-free. This one is actually a wheat-free variety and is 50% less sodium. So this is the salt content of our burger. If you don't use this, add a little bit of sea salt or herbamare. So just mix that through because you want to make sure that your vegetables are seasoned. And then the last thing we're going to add is a binder, and I'm going to use some ground flaxseed. You need about a tablespoon. Just sprinkle it over. It will absorb some of the moisture from the beets and bind this all together. It's also a great source of omega-3 fatty acids and fiber. If you let this sit for a minute, your flax will start to get sticky and start to bind these burgers. And then you can lay them out onto a baking sheet. And you're either going to put these in the oven or in a dehydrator if you're doing raw. The dehydrator you're going to put at about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and they'll take about an hour. And if you put them in the oven, you can do them at 300 or 350, and they should take a lot less time. Now, the thing about dehydrating is that it's at a lower temperature, so hopefully it doesn't destroy as much of the nutrients. But if it's taking an hour, then that is going to destroy some of the nutrients just by exposure to air for that length of time. So I find that it's a bit of a trade-off between raw and cooked food. And so when you bake them at a higher temperature, it's going to take less time. And with betalain, the phytonutrients in these beets that makes them so fantastically red, they want to have exposure to as little heat for as little time as possible. So I'm not sure which is better between 110 for an hour or 350 for about 20 minutes, but I'd say it's probably a fairly even trade-off. So do whichever works best for you. And it also depends how big these burgers are as to how fast they're going to cook. So you can make these bigger burgers to put on a bun, or you can make them smaller like this as an appetizer, and the smaller ones will take less time to cook. So while those are cooking, I just whipped up the creamiest, most delicious pesto I've ever made using the Twister jar. So if you guys want to see this recipe, leave me a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and I'll film this pesto recipe for you next week. Another exciting thing I'll mention while those are cooking is that I'm just finishing up a video course on how to make amazing veggie burgers. So if you like today's burger, you want more recipes from me and tips and advice on how to make a really good burger, check out the link down below for more info. I'm hosting the course on Udemy, which makes it really easy and simple for you to follow through, ask questions, and get interactive with me. There will be 10 of my best veggie burger recipes, all with video, and all with different ingredients and different techniques so you can see how things work in different ways. And a tutorial about the components that make up a really amazing burger. So if you're ready to crank up the rest of your barbecue season with some really excellent veggie burgers, click the link down below, enroll in the course, join me, and you might find my hidden agenda on this course is to give you an understanding of how to make burgers so that you can get creative, start to improvise, and maybe even come up with your own veggie burger recipe like my sweet purple fungi. Okay, they're ready. So you can see that they shrink a little bit as they bake because they're vegetable based. Now, serving them is the other side of making a really amazing veggie burger. Particularly if you're serving these to other people at a party or at dinner, you want to make them look fantastic because the first time someone sees something, they're going to form that impression of what it's going to taste like. So make these look spectacularly delicious. One of my favorite things to do with them is serve them on a beet green, which not only is excellent because it uses all of the beet, it looks beautiful because it's purple on green, but it also gives even more nutrients because beet greens are so super healthy. You might notice that they look like chard. They are full of lutein, which is the antioxidant in tomatoes. They're also full of beta-carotene, which is what makes carrots so healthy. Or if you want to make them a little more traditional, you can put them on some toasts. This is just a sliced up baguette, and I'm just going to put one little burger on each of these slices. Then I will top each of these with a nice little spoonful of my freshly made pesto. And those look pretty darn beautiful, but to take it right to the top, save the top of your fresh herb and just put a little garnish in the center. And then you get to wander around your party like a goddess saying, hors d'oeuvre? Because who is going to say no to this? These are beautiful. They might not know what it is. Let them take a bite, see how amazing it tastes, and then tell them how fantastically healthy it is. And remember, if you want the recipe for my homemade pesto, leave me a thumbs up, leave a comment down below to let me know you want to see it, and I'll film it for you next week. And while you're down there, be sure to check out my veggie burger course. It's going to be fantastic, and I would love to see a lot of you there so we can have some fun making more amazing veggie burgers. All right, go have a beat-tastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye, guys. The only trouble is I might wind up eating all of these myself.